So yeah, it's great to be here. One of the things that you learn about teaching is really important to know your students, and I am realizing I know nothing about any of you. So if you'll indulge me for a second, can I get a show of hands who uses Canvas primarily for teaching? Cool, and is primarily on the admin side of Canvas? Anyone do both? Cool, all right, excellent. So we've got a nice generous mix, so it'll seem like I did this on purpose. Perfect. The first thing I want to just start with, and I was thrilled to see Brian talking about this morning, is some learning management myths. One is that one size can fit all. Ken Robinson, who does a lot of talking on education, has a great analogy for this, which is that there's two ways to promote quality in the restaurant world. One is absolute consistency, so McDonald's would be the poster child of that approach. And the other is by allowing individual restaurants to do it how they want, but then have guidelines to measure quality. And so that'd be like SAGITs. So you can be confident of a restaurant that you go to based on SAGITs, and you can be confident of the consistency of McDonald's. And I would rather see education move into the SAGITs space than the McDonald's space, personally. So one size can't fit all. I would say one size can't even fit one school. I don't know how you can build a system that works equally well for mathematics and Spanish, for example. The other thing is Canvas should fill all my needs. I think that we really need to be thinking about an LMS as a thing that can be customized to our course. So I think there's a nice analogy that's come on the scene lately, which are these smartphones, where you pull it out of the box and it does some very basic things that a phone needs to do. And Canvas should do some very basic educational things. It'll connect to the internet, it has a browser, it can make phone calls if you're not on AT&T, and as I am. But Canvas shouldn't really be doing all the little innovative assessments. You don't want to spread them that thin. You want them really focused on core functionality. Yet, they still need to really build an environment where other people can plug stuff in and out of. And Canvas is the best of that, in my experience. And the final myth is that it's too hard to customize Canvas. That one's sort of true, but they are working on it all the time. So it's getting better. It's upswinging. But a lot of the stuff that I'll be showing you today, one is more school level, though the same techniques can be applied at the course level. And it takes some work. It's a little bit similar to when teaching started moving into Microsoft Word and Excel and stuff like that. We sort of stripped out a lot of the real customization and the fun pictures and drawings and innovative things and got sort of courier. And lately, because the tools have gotten so robust, you can build your own images and bring back that richness into your assessments. And I think that's what is going to be happening with LMSs too. Right now, an LMS tends to force you into multiple choice quizzes, and that's not where we want to go as a profession. And this LTI, which you heard a little bit about this morning, LTI is the way that we can bring richness of assessment back into the LMS. All right. So I was looking for an analogy to think about how we go about customizing Canvas. And I'm a bit of a car guy, and I got excited about cars. And you buy a car, and you have some options, and you can figure out these options and get the car that is really personal to you. And then I was working with this analogy, and I got stuck. So I do what I always do when I get stuck, and I procrastinate. So check this out. Awesome. But the car's the wrong analogy. So we're going to skip that. It's actually a house. A house is a much better analogy. Because if you think about the words that you use when you talk about Canvas, you're sending students to Canvas. You're putting assignments in Canvas. It's really a place to go that has stuff in it. And so when you get a new house, when you buy a house, the first thing you do is you put up some pictures. There we go. Maybe you paint it. Maybe you landscape it. And these are all customizations that nearly everyone does. All the schools that I've checked out, which wasn't all of them, are doing some sort of CSS customization at this point to make Canvas feel more integrated with their school. And then you can add some furniture. And before we do that, I want to just talk about these LTIs. So LTI is the analogy for your mobile phone would be an app. The more direct tech analogy is a Facebook application. I don't like using that one because no one likes Facebook applications, but the underlying tech is not any more complicated than a Facebook application. I wrote a couple, so and I don't have any programming background. So it's very possible to do. It's not fast, but it works. And not having something sucked into the LMS through an LTI is a lot like buying a washing machine and having it delivered in a shed to your driveway. Sure, you can do laundry, but you have to get out of the house, unlock the shed, do your laundry, go back in the house, and people just don't do as much laundry if it's in a shed on the driveway, and it's the same with LTIs. So we all have the power to help the industry in this scenario, and the way it works is anytime any ed tech person calls you on the phone and tries to pitch a product, which in my job happens, I think, every other day, you just do the following. Whether you want to buy it or not, you just go, do you have an LTI integration? And when they say no, you just go, oh, huh. No, go on. No, it's fine, just go on. And they will get the message that this is an important thing, and that will trickle back into their development teams and stuff like that. And it's not that hard to build it. Most companies will be able to devote a week or two of dev time, and they'll have some version of LTI going in there. And the truth is it helps them out too, because it's much easier for them to get you to use their product if it's in the LMS than if the student has to go out and maybe has additional credentials and stuff like that. We've run into that problem. Oh, this is a great idea. And no one uses it because they forget their passwords, and it's just a mess. So there's this place that we call LTI IKEA. And Brian Whitmer, who's the co-founder of Canvas, set this up, and I think this is turning into the App Center. Is that true? Am I right on that? I don't want to lie to you. So this is turning into the App Center, and they're really working on making this click into Canvas with just a button click. At the moment, there's some copying and pasting of keys and credentials around. It's not too bad, but for someone who's intimidated by technology when they enter it, which many of our teachers are in that category, it's a bit scary to do. So that's fantastic. We went and shopped around there and got some basic things. And it's not really a house. It's more like a house with a basement full of people that are sort of strategizing on how they're going to upgrade your house while you sleep every 3 weeks. And this council of, I guess, Care Bear helper pandas, they conspire, and then you wake up and you've got a hot tub, you've got a deck, you've got a new front door. Sometimes you didn't want a new front door, but for the most part, you're pretty excited about it. So that's a great thing to have. I like my helper pandas. If you're on the open source version, you'll quickly realize that every time people ask you to upgrade, it's really just a lot easier to go up on their cloud system. All right, so now you've got your house. It's filled with your furniture, and you're really excited because you're really special, except your house looks like just everyone else's house on Canvas. They're painted differently, but it's exactly the same. So the question is, how do you have Canvas reflect your school's identity? And it's by making your Canvas different. So how do we do that? And that's really the point of this talk. That was all just getting you in context. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to look at it just like adding something onto our house. You figure out what your plan is, you figure out what your goals are, you need to know the tools available to you, what is your zoning, so to speak, or the structure, and then you just get to work. Because we aren't as familiar with customizing Canvas as houses, we're actually going to start with number 2. And there are 5 major tools at your disposal. Oh, you don't need to take notes on any of the technical stuff. I actually set up a course that I think should be in your description. We made a bit.ly link, Customizing Canvas, that will actually give you some technical background to how we did each of these things. So I don't bore you with that. Yes? Sure, it's this one's bit.ly / C Customizing C Canvas. And let's see if I can quickly show you that. It just looks like that. It's not supremely elegant, it's more of just me brain dumping everything that we've been doing. All right. And this is being recorded, and I'm going fast to show you a lot of examples. So really look at this as a way to gather ideas and then come back to it. And you can always email me. And I'm glad that's in blue, so the web won't see it, but it's, well, come to me later. No, actually, anyone can email. You can either do canvas@eastsideprep.org, which will go to a few of us, or jbriggs@eastsideprep.org. All right. So here's our tools in order of complexity. CSS, which is mostly painting your house, sometimes hiding things. JavaScript, which will literally let you do nearly anything to the web page after it's loaded. And it's really a testament to Instructure that they trust us with that tool, because it's kind of like the table saw. You can run your finger right through it if you're not careful. But there's some things you can do with a table saw that you can't do with a handsaw. API is a real plumbing style tool, so it gets data in and out without needing to use the web browser. Very powerful. LTIs are those additions that we talked about. Sometimes it's bringing the washing machine inside. Sometimes it's a whole other site, and that'd be more like putting on a garage. And the final tool, and this is the trickiest one, is convincing Instructure that your feature is in their best interest against everyone else. So it is possible, though, but it takes some work. So we're going to go through Eastside Prep as if we're reading Architectural Digest. All right, we're going to look at pictures. We're going to see sort of brief introductions, but I'm not going to really go into what kind of caulk we used in the bathroom. Right, it's going to be sort of high level, and we'll go kind of fast, and hopefully there'll be some time for questions. And if there's not, I'll stick around into lunch if anyone wants to talk to me. All right. So, like any good article, we need to start with what our overarching concept was. And for Eastside Prep, it's hubs and spokes. So we think of a hub as the answer to the question to where do I go for? So for our parents, we think of where do I go for school information? www.eastsideprep.org. Where do I go for information about my student? Canvas. And for students, where do I go for information? This is Canvas. And then teachers have a variety of different systems. And then spokes are features that extend off of these hubs. So you don't need to memorize this by any means, but each of these yellow dots is essentially a database of information that helps us run the school. And the spokes are how the information gets where it needs to go, but we're always trying to put them into a single user experience that makes sense from the outside, which isn't necessarily at all related to how it's engineered underneath. Canvas is interesting because it serves 3 major constituencies simultaneously, and that makes it a really complicated problem. So be patient with your Canvas devs. So our plan was to put information where we thought it ought to be and have Canvas reflect our philosophy at Eastside Prep. Because, of course, we're the best school around, right? I'm sure all of you can agree. You can all agree with that own statement for yourself, I'm sure. So, as a quick aside, SAS Imports are awesome. The tech is fantastic, but they're about as exciting as looking at the water heater. So we're not going to touch those. Right? Water heaters, cool tech in there. Is the room am I going too fast? Because I have a problem with that. I do. Nearly every course eval from students is, it'd be nice if you slowed down a little bit. All right. So here's some exciting stuff. So we're going to go with the grades page first, as a room, so to speak. One of the things that we were bothered with philosophically a little bit, or at least hesitant to allow, was for the conversation between students and teachers to be manipulated, modified, coached by parents. And so one of the things, I don't know if they've fixed this lately, but one of the things when we installed Canvas was parents in the observer role could see all comments on assignments. And they could also see where on the grade band their students scored relative to other students.
Yeah, they changed it.
I believe they changed it. So way back in September or August, we went in and we could customize it because we could use a little CSS and a little JavaScript techniques to hide these things and actually remove them from the DOM, which is the thing that builds your web page. And it was really nice that we had that capability to modify their product in a way that they were happy with. We also found that we had parents who were confused about the grading symbols. Right, because you get a different symbol if it's turned in via text box or media comment or paper comment. So we wrote a little key for them and then used JavaScript to inject it right into the grades page. And this has saved me a ton of time on emails. So I've more than made back the time on this integration. If we go into the course page, this is when we first got into LTIs. And we had an SIS system that luckily we had built so we could the person to complain about it not having an LTI was me, so I would complain to myself at night, and then we would write it. And so we can take attendance in Canvas through this other site. And it needed to be an LTI because we needed the teachers log in to log them into that system, because we don't want random students to take attendance for themselves. And then when we build features into that system, they just sort of come over to Canvas. So we have ways to email the class, and we do this Gallup strengths test with our students, and so we can record their strengths and various other things. So that was really exciting for me, because now we're starting to really easily do this hub and spoke model that way. This one we actually don't do, but was on a mailing list, a Canvas mailing list. You can also use JavaScript and the API together to do things like post internal links to other things in Canvas. So if you think that your navigation on the left should have a link to your teacher's profile pages, there's ways to do that as well. Again, all the details are up on that bit.ly site. Some of the other things that this one is kind of technical, so we're really going to gloss over it. One of the other things that we used to be able to do in our old LMS, which was really one that we sort of assembled out of disparate pieces, was post agendas for classes. So today we're going to be going through these various things. And so we had to invent a way to do that, and we tied it to the Canvas calendar events system. But the problem was that there was no way to really build an event except go to the calendar and click, and then make sure you're on the right calendar, and so on. So we actually built a custom link. I'm going to just show this to you. Bear with me for 1 second. There we go. So we have this, we call them pre-notes. We have this button down here called New Pre-Note. And what it does is it launches a new event with a template in it, which is pretty cool. So we then get some consistency with teachers. It also picks the closest Sunday, because we decided to put all these on Sundays for the week. And that was our first real sort of JavaScript trick in it. You can, for those of you who are more technically minded, you can pass parameters in the URL to pre-fill out a form for someone when they create a new form, which is a really nice technique. And that just is baked into Rails, their underlying framework. Okay. So that's all internal Canvas, mostly user interface stuff. We also, once we had this LTI connection built for our SIS, we could do things that we would never have done for students before, such as give them access to their schedule, because we didn't want students to have a login to the SIS, because it's like danger, right? But through here, it's relatively safe because they get sort of compartmentalized. And so they can download their schedules, download progress reports and final term grades. Their finals are right now, so we don't have final term grades up there yet. And do course evaluation surveys, which are all, again, spokes into other systems. But bringing it under that umbrella makes it feel more natural and actually gets students to do them. And the student self-assessment we'll talk about in a little bit. And so the observation was, and this is really exciting, is that while we were going through and learning all these customization techniques to solve problems, around, I don't know, maybe February or March, we started to see opportunities. And turning that corner is great, because now we're actually thinking about Canvas as this thing that we can play with our other systems. So the first one is that second link in the middle there is called student self-assessments. Now that we had this way to make sure that it was easy for students to get here, we took our progress reports and we loaded them back up to the students and asked them to fill out a survey on how they thought they were doing in school on some sort of responsible action metrics, so perseverance, engagement, preparedness, and self-advocacy. They could hover over progress report and see it, and then they could say what they expected to get in that course, and then we had them do a summary comment, and then our advisors would read that report and basically call BS on it or not call BS on it, to gloss over the details a little there. And because it was an LTI, it was just like go to Canvas, click on 401 dashboard, and fill it out. So that was fantastic. The other thing we did is we found it difficult to figure out whether an assignment was missing or not, because between a paper assignment being graded or not graded, you don't really know unless you do a lot of digging on what the assignment type is, whether it's missing. It might just be ungraded. So we actually, you can figure it out, but it takes about 5,000 data points to do this, right? So we could use the API. It takes like 2 or 3 minutes, but suck down all the student data, then go query all the assignment data, and then make a reasonable deduction as to whether or not the assignment is missing or not. And so these are sort of our categories. We've got, missing late and how I put in hours just for fun, so 1,100 hours overdue. And then if it's an offline assignment and there's no grade entered, then you really have to go to the teacher because there's no way to tell within the existing structure. That was fantastic. The other thing is if we go back to that weekly agendas example, after we had built it, we then had the question, well, did people do it? Right? And in the old days, you'd have to click through every course, and 280 courses, flipping through the calendar through however many months it's not my idea of fun. But we could go through the API, and we could actually ask it how many events are on Sunday that have this table in it. In fact, this one's so much fun that I'm going to show it to you. Tech folk have a slightly different definition of fun, by the way. This is the assignment report, what it looks like in full. You can tell that it's a ton of data, right? These things get slower as the term goes on, too. But here, so we built this sort of blank page, and then you can run some JavaScript on it, which will go out to the API and fetch the data. You can see it populating everything that people did. And so I can tell right now, and I hate to call these people out on the web, but that's a physics thing. It's really interesting, but we'll skip it. American literature, right, had 5. And there's 11 weeks in the term, so literary foundations, they're doing great. And we can sort of get some analysis of what people did in terms of these weekly agendas and whether they're effective. And we can say, oh, look, they did too much work. They did 27. They must have still been posting every day. And we can go find that teacher and say, you know what? I hate to tell you, but you did more work than you needed to do. So the ability to go back into the LMS and build reports for yourself on the fly is one of those things where you're kicking yourself. I wish I had built some mechanism to track this data, but then it's already there and you can get it back, which is very cool. Oh, sorry. There we go. So now we're really an opportunity to land. We do this thing at our school called iGrants, where we are a little disillusioned with conferences, no offense to all of you in this conference, where the money that we spend for teachers to go to conferences doesn't always pay back. So we have this option now where you can just have $250 to go do something interesting. And so this grew out of one of those things that we call iGrants. And we had a bunch of 7th grade teachers who do an integrated 7th grade research project. And the problem is that students start to peter out in terms of interest. Because for a 7th grader, 5 weeks is like forever, right? And so they wanted to build in some sort of gamification thing to play with this to try and keep people engaged. So they came up with this concept where you would get points and you could buy items and you could sort of dress up a paper doll, so to speak. And so we turned it into this game called Avatari. And you get points, and you can buy items and stuff like that, and you dress up your avatar. And I think we'll actually talk more about this in the LTI showcase that is happening later. It was a lot of fun. The code's all open and on GitHub. You can feel free to download it. Don't run it like it's production code, though. It doesn't even really have a security model at this point. It was just really a proof of concept. In fact, we had to lock it off on the firewall because our 7th graders were sitting at home banging on it, trying to give themselves more dollars at night. So, but it was a lot of fun, and it shows you the power that this customization engine has, that you can just sort of throw a game that you invented into the mix. And this is another sort of real meta example. I teach a programming class, and we were talking about APIs. And when we were doing APIs, we actually had the students just make an API key for their own Canvas account and write something that interacted with Canvas. So I'm going to show you that. So this is happening live, and we're downloading grades here. And this is the student who wrote this program. And you can interact with all your Canvas data here in the command prompt, which is pretty cool. You can calculate your GPA, your average. high and low. So, and she's using the API, right? The thing that they opened this morning with, this thing that we need to, this is, a 10th grader using the API, and it matters to her because it's her data, right? And the real testament to this was that when I asked her 2 weeks ago whether or not I could show this today, she said, well, and this is a winter course. She goes, you want to show the one that I have really updated? And she's been working on it after the course concluded for the last 5 months. So that, I don't know, that makes me feel good as a teacher. All right. So hopefully I've inspired some of you to either go after this yourself in a sort of, put a new screen door onto your house sort of fashion, or at least design something that you can contract out to a contractor. I think Instructure even has professional services. If you design something up, you can go ask them to build it for you. That's the more expensive route. And if you're taking them on yourself, just be aware that it never works right the first time. That's okay. As you get more into writing software, you realize just how wrong you can be. And so don't feel like that's just you. It's for all of us. There are 2 accounts that you may or may not know about that come with a hosted Instructure account. One is yourschool.beta.instructure.com, which runs what they're about to release. And the other one is the same, which is a test. Abuse those, because that way if you break them, no one cares. And you will break things as you customize. And the final, you also need to be aware of caching, but we'll skip that. It'll always take twice as long as you think it will, even if you account for this rule. The other way that's sometimes said is the first 80% takes 80% of the time. The last 20% takes the other 80% of the time. So there's a bunch of things you can do. You can play with the LTI apps at LTI IKEA. The link's up there. It's also linked from Instructure. You can certainly check out our customizing Canvas page. And I will take this whole deck and in an hour or so upload the entire thing up there so you can reference it. And you can certainly contact us at Eastside Prep. We're really happy to help. Canvas at eastsideprep.org or jbriggs at eastsideprep.org. And I'll take any questions if I have any time. Yes?
So when you build in these customizations, what happens when Canvas upgrades?
So the question is, oh, by the way, if I don't repeat the question, yell at me, because they'll get really mad at me in the back. So the question is, when I build in these customizations and Canvas upgrades, what happens? So some of the JavaScript and CSS customizations occasionally do break on Canvas upgrades. I found that Patrick, who works with our account team, is really proactive about looking at those and finding it out. And I've often received emails of stuff that was broken before I knew it was broken. You can use the beta account to test your CSS and how it applies to that new thing. For the most part, it's only been 2 little things that were quick to fix. But when you're writing any software, it's not just about the time to write it, it's also about the time to maintain it moving forward. So we always try to look for an in-house Canvas solution first before we go to the trouble of writing something. Yeah, great question. Yes?
Running some of the reports, you said some of them take a long time. Is it better to run those like in beta?
Oh, that is, I have not. So the question is, running some of those reports, I mentioned that they take a long time. Is it better to run those against the beta account? You certainly could. I think the beta account is actually slower than the main account. They don't put as many resources behind it. And it doesn't, you running that API request queue doesn't actually slow down the Canvas for everyone else. So it's fine to do it that way. If you're running a lot of reports and you want, and especially if it's not a user base that you have a lot of contact with, if you were to have reports for students or for parents, then you'd want to do something where you do them in the middle of the night and cache the results and then pass them out. Yeah, question way in the back.
I was just going to say we do that. We do them in the middle of the night and cache them, and then provide please run it right now.
Right. Yeah, so that's the best workaround for that is cache the results and then give people a refresh button, and most people won't bother refreshing it. And you can even scope those refresh buttons per course, which will speed it up as well.
There's also an API call that will tell you whether the job is still running.
Yes.
So it's important to do that too.
Yeah, so if you build a big job like pulling down an actual report that Canvas provides, you can you can check on it. Yeah, and SAS Imports is one that in particular can take 20 to 30 minutes to run, depending on the size of your school. And there's a way to check on that and report back to the user when it's done.
Beta won't have their most current data. It's only once a
Yeah, beta will be 3 weeks behind. So it depends. If you're doing a pre-note report like we were doing, that's fine. But if you're doing missing assignments, it's not going to work for you. Other questions? That maybe dove a little too deep. Anyone else? People are just hungry, right? It's like class right before lunch. All right. Well, if you're ever in the Seattle area, feel free to give us a call. We'd love visitors. So thank you so much.